the Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
Financial Survival Network is presented to you by Regal Assets. Buy and sell physical gold and silver through your existing retirement plan, 100% tax-free with Regal Assets. If you want to include physical gold or silver in your existing IRA or old 401k, request your free investment kit, which was recently featured in the Forbes and Smart Money Wall Street Journal magazines. Call toll-free 855-678-6620, 855-678-6620, or visit regalassets.com. You're listening to the FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz on 1590 WPSL. You've been listening to the Financial Survival Network for a while now. You've heard hundreds of guests. By now you know, hopefully you understand, that the financial system is going to crash. Nothing is going to be the same. So what are you going to do about it? What is the system going to look like after? And that's why we've got Gordon T. Long on. He knows his stuff, and he's going to give us an idea. And welcome back, Gordon.
Thank you, Kerry. Nice to be back. Been a while. Always enjoy our conversations.
Yeah, been too long, but now here we are. Cyprus, any other number of criminal acts that have taken place. We know the outcome now. There's no question. You can't possibly be wondering how this thing is going to end. So you seem to speculate we're going to go back to a metallic-based currency, gold-backed in some regard, and that can only mean good things for gold. Where do you see the world winding up after this ultimate crash, which will be here? Either it'll be here next month, next year, 3 years. It's coming. They can't keep it back any longer, can they?
Well, you never know for sure how long they can keep kicking the can down the road. They're pretty good at it. But it's the first time in a number of years where the roadmap is now really clear. It's preordained because they put us on a track that's almost irreversible. So investing has become easier if you just want to, if you can do your homework, make the decisions, and then hold tight, because there's no question the system is crumbling. With the malinvestment, Kerry, and mispricing is so rampant across not just the financial systems, but right into prices and products. And for a recovery ever to happen, you have to reset prices. You need a market clearing event. And a market clearing event is not just about a stock market and the bond market. It's right down into real estate. And that's the only way you're going to get a recovery. And we've obviously found out that printing more money and the propensity of the use of that money just is failing. So there's no question an event is coming. I think there's another kick the can down the road, frankly, of something called OMF, overt monetary financing, which is a very fancy word for simply outright monetization of deficits. And if you think the balance sheets of the central banks have already grown dramatically here in the last couple of years, you're looking for an order of magnitude going forward. And I've all sorts of charts that I can show of why this is inevitable. And so that may buy them more time. We may get another 12, 18 months, but it's somewhat irrelevant because until we have this adjustment, the system could never recover. We've got baby boomers that are retiring. We got the European legacy system crumbling around itself without even getting into the whole banking discussion. So the question, as you correctly point out, Kerry, if you know that, what's it going to look like? Okay, what's it going to be like in 2 years or whatever? And my conclusion from that is that we're going to see the root of the problem is unsound money. And when you get into the root of that unsound money, a lot of it has been the United States reserve currency and its domination around the world. And that is reversing because of the petrodollar shift, the tremendous numbers of agreements that China, Russia's are signing where they don't need the United States dollar. The U.S. trade balances now are deficits, so we're not the trading trading powerhouse that we've been, so that the $6 trillion of U.S. reserves that are out there are being reduced as a percentage of the total globe. And you start to have even 1%, 2% returned, Kerry, that's no longer needed for trading. You just say take 2% of 6 trillion, you got 6 trillion, you got 120 billion. Now remember, that's fractionally banked land. So we're talking over $1 trillion. You want to know what hyperinflation is. So that's what's in store, and you're seeing now a shift with these sovereigns. Especially look at China; they're buying over 1,000 tons of gold. Russia can't buy it fast enough. You've got Germany now demanding that their gold be returned. Granted, it's going to take them 7 years to get it back, which in itself is hilarious. But there's a shift, and that's telling you that there's going to be an alternative currencies unfold in the next couple of years to the United States dollar as a reserve currency. And I've been talking about for a couple of years that I think that you're going to see a renminbi that's going to be partially gold backed within 3 to 5 years. They would like it to be further out as they continue this vendor financing game that they're in of mercantilism, but it may be pushed on them earlier. And they're already with these agreements, and they just held the BRIC meeting in Africa where they're talking about a development bank. They're talking about funding pools for currencies. China's already putting in these trading hubs. They've had them in Singapore and Hong Kong and Taiwan. Now they're going into Singapore and into London, all to increase the float and the ability for the renminbi to be traded on a global basis. And I've also said for quite some time that it's my opinion in Europe that Germany will leave the euro, and that they will do that within a couple years, because the best thing for them is to go back to the mark, partially gold back it. Probably Austria might join them, the Netherlands, the Finlands, that have the same mentality about sound money, and with the Target 2 accounts at the level that they are and being secured, because if they'll take those with them, basically the EU will be able to devalue, but the assets will be controlled by the German banks if you really get into it. A little long-winded there, yeah. Kerry, but I really see some of this stuff is the timing we can debate.
Yeah, but the outcome is inevitable. One thing I want to go over with you, this concept of partial backing. There really is no such thing as partial backing. It's like being a little pregnant, where I remember had a company in New York, and we had the messengers that came from disadvantaged backgrounds. And one day this guy Amadio comes in and says, I was late because my brother got a little stabbed. And, you can't just have a little gold backing. It's really an all or nothing proposition. You can say it's 5% backed, but then effectively you have revalued your currency in terms of gold, regardless what percentage you say. If it's convertible, for instance, when a dollar was convertible into gold, pari passu, one-on-one, $20 bought you an ounce of gold. Well, then all of a sudden, maybe 40% of the dollar was backed, so it would be a $40, bill for an ounce of gold. So, as a practical matter, can you really have partial gold backing?
No, you can't. It's only when you actually are going to demand the exchange for the gold, and then it's a fixed amount. But no, the currency will price itself based on being gold back or great to a great degree, and do it pretty quickly.
Yeah, and then
and this sort of thing's going to happen, Kerry, because right now we have a currency cartel. Mm-hmm. We all know about the OPEC cartel, but we have a currency cartel that 90% of the world's trade is conducted in 4 currencies. That is the British sterling, the US dollar, the Japanese yen, and the euro. And all 4 of those are debasing their currency at a phenomenal rate and doing it together, and it's coordinated. And I can show you charts to just show you how timed this is. Yeah. And which makes, when it's isn't that what a cartel is? Now, the reason But the reason it works is because if you debase your currency and it goes down, something's got to go up, right? I mean, so where would it go? But if you debase it all together, there's nowhere to go. And if you have 90%, you can't flee anywhere. And that's the gig. That's what they have us trapped into as a cartel. It's like you can only buy your oil from OPEC if they had total control. Now, what's going to happen is you're pushing the countries that are not in that cartel, and I'll pick on the BRICS, that is China, Russia, as a group, to come up with an alternative. You're forcing some of the others indirectly, Germany, because of what it's meaning to them right now, also into a path, but more so the BRICS because of the amount of trading that they're doing. This is what I mean by it's preordained. So they can keep this cartel operating for another period of time with overt monetary financing, but something's going to trigger this, and when it triggers, the other currencies will then immediately be an opportunity for a flight to safety. And I think it'll be the renminbi, and frankly, I think it'll come because of a conflict between China and Japan, not because of the Western countries, because Japan in itself has got a huge problem.
Yeah, that's for sure. They're really on the rocks. They've been doing this quantitative easing for decades already, and really worked so well for them that every country should be following their example, which they are. And the amazing thing, though, is that right now in Asia, China accounts for 40% of the trade going on in Asia right now. The U.S. is really irrelevant in Southeast Asia, whether it's Thailand, Vietnam, Korea, even Japan. And yet, when you combine the U.S. with the EU into one trading bloc, which it effectively has become because of the coordinated devaluations, debasement, 45% of China's trade goes out the window when this thing crashes, and there just isn't enough trade to keep all those people working. So this thing is cataclysmic in that I believe it's a case where every government in the world, or at least every government of every major country in the world, probably falls once the dollar falls, because there really is no insurance policy against the inevitable, individually perhaps, but on a national level. China loses 30% of its exports in 1 week. Man, forget it. That's cataclysmic.
You got it in spades. Right now you got to understand that the manufacturing and the sort of productivity gains that are going on, China itself can't produce enough new factories against the Schumpeter's creative destruction to be able to fill the job needs of the 50 million people that are leaving the rice paddies and going into the main cities looking for jobs. And you've got a 70% U.S. consumption economy that's already slowing down. So you put those together. This is going to be, and then you overlay a global fiat currency system. So what's going to happen, Kerry, this is going to be the very first time it's going to be a global correction. We always have faced very, country or regional corrections, but we've never faced a global one. And it spreads, and there's no way out from any of the countries. They'll hit it in various degrees. That's what's terrifying China and Russia and the other countries. They see what's coming. They're prepared for it, but they know the severity of how much it's going to hit them. And in spite of the drunken sailors that are running the major developed countries, the politicians, they have to keep them in power.
How dare you insult drunken sailors by comparing them to central bankers? How dare you?
As a sailor, I stand corrected on that. But you see, they're predictable. And I say the developed countries, because they're addicted to the debt, and therefore they know that they'll print the money so that the other countries can kind of plan around it the best they can and keep this thing going. The country that's unpredictable right now is Japan, and there's a natural animosity in Asia between Japan and China, and it's highly competitive. and 20% of Japanese trade's going to China. And here you've got Japan right now, 25% devaluation of the yen, and we haven't even begun. That we're looking at the amount of printing that's going to go on at the Bank of Japan at the debt levels that they've already had. 520% of GDP total debt, 225% on sovereign debt, 25% of the tax revenues on interest, 1%, and if they get this 2% inflation increase in 2 years, bonds move 1%. There's not enough money to even possibly pay the debt. They know that. I mean, you can do basic arithmetic. So what are they trying to do? And China's looking across at Japan and saying they're out of control.
Yeah. And the Chinese, hey, I remember when Japan was ascendant in the 80s, and they could do no wrong in the eyes of the U.S. media, and in our own mental state, we believed the Japanese had found a better way. Exactly the same thing with China. We believe problems are managed in China, everything's under control, and yet countries that emerge from totalitarian systems, the transition to a stable government and a stable economy is very tortuous. And just because the Chinese have been doing great for the past 20 years, in the scheme of where they were and where they're heading means absolutely nothing. It's not to say that I don't believe the world is becoming an Asian world and that they'll be dominant, but they're not going to be dominant in the way that we look at them now. That's my belief, because in the final analysis, the individual has to come out victorious in this upheaval, or we're headed for another dark ages.
Yeah, the new world, we've moved into a knowledge society, and we all say, oh yeah, well, what's new in that? But we got to understand it's now about innovation, and time is a new competitive dimension. And what that means is it's your ability to be creative and original. And that's never been the strength of the Chinese per se. They're very good at repeating and reproducing. Matter of fact, they're brilliantly disciplined at doing that. And so are the Japanese. But new, creative, fresh approaches have never been their forte. Now that is changing as their educational system is mounting. But this is a different world. And that creativity is going to come not from a single country, Kerry. It's going to come from individuals in all the countries, and the internet and communications is going to allow people to do that. You're going to find people in rural areas with the creative, fresh ideas, and we're not creating big companies anymore. There's small companies that can be put together, and that creativeness is the way of the future. I don't know what you feel on that, but
I feel very much the way you do, because look, I set up my little radio network station. I'd go on terrestrial. You talk to countless people every week. We talk to the same people. And 10 years ago, I don't know what you were doing. I was busy buying distressed assets and collecting them. But, I never foresaw myself as part of this emerging global structure of people listening to me, because I listen to people, I talk to people who are smarter than I am about things, and they gain insight and knowledge. I never anticipated being here, and I think you can multiply this times many, many thousands. That's where we're heading. And, it's an interesting situation, though, because the government doesn't want it. Just like they hate your freedom, they hate your ability to get in a car and go wherever the hell you want without there being a railroad track or a subway to take you there. They don't want your mind to go off the tracks either. They want you controlled and contained, and not drinking the beverages that they don't want you to drink, not smoking cigarettes, but smoking enough to give them taxes, but not too much to jack up the cost of the health system. And, this collision is taking place right now. I think we see it really in the U.S., but I think it's the whole world over. It's really happening, because you have to let people go where they want to go. If you don't, the alternative becomes pretty frightening.
Precisely. Absolutely, and well said. Many years ago, I was involved, I spent a big part of my career with IBM and Motorola in computing and communications. And back then, and this is a lesson that applies right to what you just said, it was all about centralized computing, days of mainframes, and the whole world changed where we went with the PCs to distributed, and we realized that the hierarchy was the upside, was reverse. That the centralized process were just depositories, so that the distributed network where the individual could do the work, think of it as the PC, your apps, we harnessed the world, but that was the pyramid. Governments are still running on this old model. They collect the money at the federal level and then they pass it all the way down to the lowest level. Where in actual fact, Kerry, the world, and we have the communications and the network, the world should be flipped around. The power should be at the lowest possible level. And for an example, communities should be raising the taxes and deciding on what they want. And there should be this coordinating effort that's going up. And that's not the way governments are, nor will they ever want it to be, because of the nature of wanting to maintain power, wanting to maintain control. But the biggest flaw, Kerry, is our attitude towards government. We seem to endorse and expect the government to take care of us, to do things that shouldn't be in their purview. I watched the other day a movie called Atlas Shrugged 2. And I read the book Atlas Shrugged and Fountainhead by Ayn Rand when I was a kid. And I'll tell you, I thought I remembered it well, but was it ever a refresher? And I encourage your listeners to, if they can, because it brought home so clearly and so graphically the flaw today and the flaws in ourselves, in our perception of government and their role. And that in itself is the flaw.
Yeah, totally. And let me just disclose a little info about myself, and it's in my book, Forget Wall Street, Go for the Gold and Silver, because Wall Street, again, Wall Street doesn't exist anymore. You know that, Gordon, and I know it. It's a backdrop for CNBC where they can ring the bell and make it look like, hey, Wall Street is solid, but it's a bunch of networks all over the world, and people don't go to Wall Street. The stocks don't get traded there. They're traded digitally in the less than the blink of an eye. But my distrust of government goes back to my father, who was a hump pilot in World War II. He used to fly over Mount Everest, flying supplies from India to China, and hated it. It was like catch-22. They said, well, you fly 1,800 hours or 1,850 hours, you get to go home. He hated the Army so much, he's volunteering left and right, and then he's about to hit the magic number. They say, oh, sorry, it's 2,250. So the second time they did that to him, he just decided he wasn't going to fly anymore, and he would always find something wrong with the plane, why it wasn't airworthy. And the other thing was, it was towards the end of the war, and the nature of the cargo changed. It changed from bullets and guns to ketchup and vats of mustard and feminine hygiene products and condoms. And he just said, I'm not risking my life for what effectively became a corporatist endeavor, which really all war is exactly that. The spoils of war now are you get to spread your product culture to the loser. And, my distrust of government is to my bones from my father. And I never understood how central that would become in my life until I picked doing what I'm doing now. And what you say is spot on. Don't trust them because there is no free lunch. If you're getting a free lunch, you are going to be paying with your freedom and your happiness and any chance you have at happiness. I guess that's what long-winded, roundabout way of saying that don't trust them.
Our forefathers were exactly clear on what you just said, Kerry. They warned us about this. They built a system to help protect it from happening, but we have allowed it to happen. Yeah. We're slowly having our Bill of Rights. I'm as proud a patriot as anybody, and therefore I'm going to fight for the rights of our Bill of Rights and what we built the country on. But they're being eroded, and terribly, and at a faster and faster rate. And they're being allowed to erode because of fear. That is, we create fear, and then people are willing to sacrifice these privileges and rights for the sake of what they perceive as safety, and the government's going to take care of you. It never does. It can't. It's not capable of it. And if you want examples, look at Katrina, look at look at what happened in New Jersey with the last hurricane example. The government can't do that. That is not their. I mean, they're partially their role, but but when we come to expect that, we're flawed, and that's what we've got to. We've got to reverse that, and I don't know if it's reversible because they're taking advantage of it. There's not a crisis that goes by that there's not another grab, in my estimation.
Yeah. Never let a crisis go to waste, as the president's former chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, said. And boy, they've been taking advantage of everyone from 9/11 on. And really, it's real hard to disconnect from the system. But you can partially disconnect, just the same way that China, Brazil, the BRICS are partially disconnecting. They can't get totally out of it because it's a huge part of the market, the EU, the US, and Japan. There is no escape from it, but a little bit of insulation, and that means buying gold and silver. I don't know what the stock market's going to foretell, even the resource stocks, because we can't live without them, even though the environmentalists would like us to believe that you can, right? So how do you protect yourself? What do you do? What are you doing, Gordon?
Well, a lot of various things, Kerry. Certainly, hard assets, as reflected with gold and silver, should be anybody's a core part of their holding, but not a dominant part, because I fully expect people that are holding gold and silver for the governments to come after us, whether through taxation or one method or another. So it needs to be a part of your holdings. But the key, Kerry, is to understand what wealth is and what money is. And there is a difference as we debase money. Money is no longer a store of value. So what is wealth? Well, wealth is in assets. And to me, wealth today is in free, discounted cash flow. So that even as the economies get tough, and they're going to, and things get really tough, and we go through this repricing and this market clearing event that I suggested, a lot of things are going to do very, very well, thank you. But they're only going to do it if they have a free, unencumbered cash flow. That cash flow is real wealth. So you need to get your money. Gold and silver, as good an investment as they are, they're only insurance policies that protect and store your wealth. They in themselves don't create any additional wealth. But so you need assets that will also generate, but they need to generate that free cash flow in an economy that's going to be much slower, much more difficult, and at different price levels. So, you can buy free cash flows right now today, but just a minute, what are the assets value? Because those asset values are going to plummet. So you need to do your homework, and it's all part of the Austrian school of the indirect exchange. And I did a show a while ago with Ty Andros, and we went through with Warren Buffett and Heinz, and showed that he is actually the master of the indirect exchange and how he's using insurance monies as cash to translate that paper into hard assets. And the hard assets, and he doesn't confuse the difference between price and value, and what those repriced assets are going to be worth if we ever see some major currency adjustments. So that's the key, is you really got to find real businesses. As Buffett says, he doesn't buy the market, he buys companies. So you need to buy assets, find those assets, and they're typically hard assets because, Kerry, and you and I both know that wealth is you can either mine it, you farm it, or you build it. You can't print it, and so that's what you look for. But you got to be careful because a lot of those hard assets today are very much overpriced. I caution you. I was buying farmland many years ago, and I'm looking at the farmland prices. They're getting crazy now.
Oh, yeah.
And as more and more people flood into it. So it was a great hot idea 10 years ago in 2002, 2001. So it's changing.
Yep, definitely is. And I like things that pay a nice dividend. And if you need to be mindful of taxes, and master limited partnerships are masterful at avoiding taxes, at least while you own them. Eventually, when you go to sell them, then there's certain tax ramifications, recapture and such. But I really see it as as a really good way of maximizing income, sharing in increased cash flow that will result from inflation. We're going to have inflation, no doubt, before we have this massive deflation, which basically inflation arguably is a form of deflation because the value of gold and silver goes up when you have this inflation in real terms. But without getting into the economic issues, those needs, things that people need that they must have, like putting energy in your car, in your home, whatever, other things like that, food, there's no question you're going to need it. So don't pay too much for it, but understand that this is where we're heading.
Yeah, Kerry, you need to. My opinion is you need to see investments that you can feel and touch and need to be close to home.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want you don't want papers and other instruments in between you, because they're counterparties. There's all sorts of legislation, regulations that can change and separate you from your assets. So you want assets that are often local. They're close by. They're good businesses. They may not be high profile, but they're stable and they have a dominant share of a particular market. And I'm reflecting on businesses, but there are all sorts of investments that are like that. I'm getting very skeptical, at least in the near future, of the whole securities markets because of the level of pricing that's in it.
And the corruption.
Right? And the very good point. Very good point.
Yeah. I mean, it's so corrupt.
And I think that's a universal problem. I was seeing studies here recently showing the lack of confidence and the crisis of trust that we have globally with the financial systems. The markets may be going up, but it's not the small-time person that's getting into the markets and hasn't for some time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That's not the case, which is a lack of trust.
The algorithms are kind of dominating it.
Black box algo traders, unfortunately what's happened in there, Kerry, is that the Wall Street and the capital markets are no longer doing their role, and that is the reallocation of capital into productive means. It's not working that way, and therefore everything's about a bottom line improvement, not top line. So we're not investing in productivity and things that are going to grow organically. And a Chinese economist said it here a while ago, and I just busted up laughing. And he says, it's only in America where you take the brightest and smartest that you have, your engineers, and they spend all their time trying to figure out devious ways to pick other people's pockets versus doing something that's going to create natural innovation. And that's unfortunately the kiss of death, is it not?
Hey, well, look at it this way also. What's easier, to go raise capital for a business, regardless whether it's service or products, new business, or is it easier to borrow money to buy a flat screen TV on your credit card, or buy a new home that you probably still can't afford or could barely afford, that's going to add absolutely nothing to the economy? The answer is consumer housing debt, much easier to come by than business debt for promising new businesses. And that is twisted because it's exactly what you said, standing the allocative functions of the financial markets on their head, where they reward consumption and they penalize or just fail to fund production. So no wonder we're a nation of consumers, not producers, and no wonder we're in this pickle that we're in. And until that changes, forget it.
That's why you will have an event that will be, I'll call it a market clearing event, where that's the only way. You can't plan for it. It becomes a sudden shock to the system where you get this repricing. It's forced into the system, what flushes out this malinvestment. And the system, the powers to be, will do everything they can to preserve it as long as they can. Of course, it's kind of natural order of things, but the system doesn't work. It's like trees growing. They don't grow to the sky. You don't know when they're going to suddenly collapse and fall down. All you know is they always do, right?
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
naturally they're unstable.
Benjamin Graham said it, the tree does not grow to the sky.
Precise, and that's what we've got. And our system is absolutely unstable right now. and something will trigger it. It's somewhat irrelevant to know what it's going to be. You just know it's going to happen because this degree. And for, just right off the top, in the United States, our dollar is probably 40 to 50% overvalued for a whole bunch of reasons that are not good reasons. And therefore, what that means is we have a throwaway society. Nobody fixes anything anymore. Nobody repairs anything because it's cheaper to buy something that's new. So think of the millions of jobs that we don't do where people would be repairing a service and fixing them. Now, if the dollar was 40%, 50% devalued, we suddenly couldn't afford to buy new, and we'd be repairing things. Correct?
Oh yeah,
now,
you're right.
I'm not trying to espouse that as a strategy to get more jobs. I'm just trying to show the magnitude of the malinvestment and mispricing that's going on just on currency manipulations alone.
Yeah, no doubt. And what you say is 100% true. The throwaway society, because the dollar is so overvalued, it's not worth rebuilding that transmission, not worth stripping that car, and then throw in the environmental concerns too, and it becomes a total loser. And basically, the economy is sitting on a San Andreas fault, and it's just waiting for that magnitude 8 or 9 or 10 quake to come and just blast it apart. On that note, Gordon, we got to run, but obviously you're going to want to go contact Gordon. You're going to want to look at his site. Where do we find you, Gordon?
Yeah, please, GordonTLong.com. I write and do videos, do a number of things that we talk about this all the time. We have a YouTube channel also called Gordon T. Long, and we have a Canadian site called Triggers, where we take this from a macro standpoint and convert it into trading strategies. It's a heavy technical analysis for those that know what that is, where we really try and marry up what's happening on the global and take it right down to daily and hourly trading charts.
Hey, and it's what we were talking about, not just at the federal level, the state level too. There's a funny email I just got, New York State Spendometer. It's spending $4,288 per second. It's spending $370 million per day, $2.6 billion per week, $11 billion per month. You think that's sustainable? Just multiply that times about 100, and you start to get the feel of what's going on at the federal level. Hey, Gordon, thanks so much for being on the Financial Survival Network. We will talk with you again real soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Kerry. Bye.
Be well. Bye.
The Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
Financial Survival Network is presented to you by Regal Assets. Buy and sell physical gold and silver through your existing retirement plan, 100% tax-free with Regal Assets. If you want to include physical gold or silver in your existing IRA or old 401k, request your free investment kit, which was recently featured in the Forbes and Smart Money Wall Street Journal magazines. Call toll-free 855-678-6620, 855-678-6620, or visit regalassets.com.